Good evening. Today is Friday, April 28, 2017. Welcome to the Government News Brief. In the news this evening, Education Minister receives preliminary Commission of Inquiry report. Child Care and Protection Agency records significant success for first quarter, and funding challenges impeding completion and handing over of housing schemes. Stay tuned for these and other stories. Thank you for staying with us. I am Renetta LaFleur. Here are the details. Minister of Education Rupert Roopnarine today received the preliminary findings from the Education Commission of Inquiry, which was launched in April 2016. Tiffany Rogers tells us about some of the findings in this report.
After 1 year and 98 consultations with stakeholders in the education sector, the Commission of Inquiry is calling for redress to issues ranging from administration to the curriculum in the education sector across Guyana. Chairman of the COI, Ed Caesar, says at the administrative level, officers need to have a better understanding of their roles.
We must find a way to ensure that the relationship between the regional administration and the education department in every region, that relationship is enhanced. We have discovered that there seems to be a disconnect somewhere. There seems to be something were said to us that some of the regional education officers don't seem to understand their responsibilities. Unless there is in place a system of sanctions where people who are not performing are either removed or disciplined, we will continue in this same road until our great-grandchildren become education officers.
The report also made recommendations for financial management to be seriously addressed. Caesar highlights what amounts to fraud in some parts of the country.
We were in the Berbice River and we have some concerns about what is happening. We have seen pay sheets with names of teachers who, as far as the head teacher is concerned, don't exist. We have seen ghost teachers, so to speak.
Other findings in the report call for empowering of teachers, re-evaluating of the school feeding program, more attention for special education and better designs of school buildings, among others. Minister of Education Rupert Roopnarine says the findings validate the COI's need and assures that there is sufficient information for the government to act.
This preliminary report tells me that I was completely correct in establishing the commission. It has begun to do the kind of work that I feel needs to be done. I think this inquiry is in fact going to lay the basis for the kind of transformation that the entire country is awaiting. And education has to play its part.
The preliminary report will be presented to Cabinet for its review. The final report is expected in 3 weeks and will be presented to the National Assembly. For the Government News Brief, Tiffany Rogers.
The Child Care and Protection Agency has had significant success during the first quarter of 2017. Details in this report. Director of Child Care and Protection Agency CPA, Anne Green, says during the first quarter, the agency was able to prevent the separation of 841 children from their families by providing increased support and services to improve their parenting role.
These are the amount of children the families had that they were on the verge of removal because the situation was that. So we worked with the parents. Some of them were in the parenting, the special parenting program, and there are other systems that we give through the safety net program of the ministry.
Green explains that without the intervention by CPA, those children would have been placed into institutional care. She notes that the children were able to stay at home with their families whilst they received the services from CPA.
These were families that we removed the children, and some we look at, they were at risk. So we didn't remove the children. So the children were saved from being removed because they cooperate and they were helped to change some of the things that were creating the vulnerability for children.
Additionally, during the first quarter, the CPA successfully installed the new visiting committee for children's residential care institutions. The visiting committee is a recognized body authorized to visit all established children's homes and institutions. It consists of no less than 17 responsible citizens who will be working for no more than 3 years.
Minister Ali was able to install the new visiting committee for the residential care institutions. So they are on board and they have commenced working, because we have to ensure that these institutions are up to minimum standards. They must operate at a level that the minimum standards are in effect.
The agency also managed to increase its public awareness campaigns. Persons in Berbice, Essequibo, and Bartekal are among those benefiting from more information on child abuse via newspaper, television, and radio. Renetta Lafleur for the Government News Brief. Planned program to hand over hundreds of central housing and planning authorities' schemes to their respective neighborhood democratic councils is being hindered by funding challenges. More from Paul McAdam.
A number of central housing and planning authority schemes that have been developed over the years are yet to be handed over to the respective neighborhood democratic councils to be included as part of their revenue base. Minister of Communities Ronald Bulkin says this is due to the lack of financing needed to complete the program.
It comes down to adequate financing to complete this program. There is a estimate that some $60 billion is the figure that is required to complete the infrastructure. So it's an enormous challenge, but there is a list of areas that have been identified, and already in 2017 sufficient allocations have been approved, budgetary allocations, to allow for the consolidation and completion in a number of areas.
Minister Bulkin says that there are over 200 schemes that are to be handed over.
There are actually 38 schemes that were developed in the 2011-2015 period. But over and beyond that, the actual number is about 200, it's greater than 250. So I think this gives us an idea as to the enormity of the challenge that is faced. It speaks to it was overly ambitious of our predecessors, that too many new areas were created without sufficient emphasis on the completion of adequate infrastructure in those areas before new areas were created. So it's a challenge that we have inherited, that we are committed to addressing in a structured manner.
According to the minister, the infrastructural works needed to be completed at the various schemes are drainage and irrigation, roads, and to a lesser extent, community facilities such as playgrounds and community centres. Paul McAdam for the Government News Brief.
The Ministry of Agriculture is actively making preparations for farmers ahead of the approaching rainy season. Isaiah Prophet tells us more.
At its third National Climate Change Outlook Forum today, the ministry's official highlighted that one of the main aims of the forum was to develop efficient ways of distributing information to farmers and using a language that is easier for them to comprehend. Dasrat Narain, a representative from the Guyana Rice Development Board, says that over the years, understanding data presented has posed a problem for thousands of farmers.
As I mentioned previously, they normally do it through bulletins or through email. Most of the farmers, they don't have emails. And for example, I mentioned that Guyana, they have about a little over 7,000 rice farmers. So we need to have more maybe flyers to give to these farmers rather than sending out emails. And you also know that sometimes the internet connection is not that good.
Aaron Ramrup represented the National Agriculture Research and Extension Institute during his presentation, seconded the argument put forward by Narain. Ramrup says that it is necessary to revise the way the Hygiene Office distributes information, pointing out that even some of the field officers are not able to understand the data being disseminated.
My colleague, Mr. Narain, would have even mentioned that some of our extension officers doesn't understand or even can't comprehend of how the data is being presented, right? Because look, for example, we have a whole host of factors, climatic factors that influence the agriculture sector, like soil, moisture, temperature, and rainfall, wind speed, and so forth. Sometimes that where I see that the data is what should I say, sophisticated for the farmers level.
Stakeholders also raised concerns about the Hydromet's office collaboration with the National Drainage and Irrigation Authority. Such a collaboration, the stakeholders argued, would ease some of the flooding farmers endure. Acting Chief Hydromet Officer Dr. Garvin Cummins responded that the Hydromet office makes all weather information available to all the relevant departments.
So if we are forecasting rainfall for region 4, and we are forecasting anything in excess of 1.5 inch, I'm using inch here, or 2 inches of rainfall, then the NDIA, the City Council, Ministry of Public Infrastructure, all of that presents a risk of flooding. Our stakeholders will be able to make the best possible decision. And so we are supporting decision making.
Dr. Cummins says that the hope is that at the end of the forum, the ministry, along with the various stakeholders, will be able to devise a plan to equip farmers for the upcoming primary rainfall season. Isaiah Braffett, Government News Brief.
A maritime search and rescue tabletop exercise was held today for key stakeholders. Here's more in this report.
The Maritime Administration Department, MARAD, Maritime's search and rescue tabletop exercise allow participants to act out response to given scenarios. Executive Director of the Civil Defense Commission, CDC, Colonel Chabilal Ramsroop, describes the exercise as a visual activity.
Search and rescue is a very serious operation because we take into consideration the lives of people. It's two distinct operations. One is search, and after having found the object, then we start to look at the issue of rescuing those that requires it. In this operation, time is very, very important. And with time comes the equipment that we have to use.
He says that the operational drills are very important and must be done often with the relevant personnel.
The other important thing are drills, especially as it relates to our vessels. The drills, we have to practice them very often. The fire safety drills, the man overboard drills, control and command and control on board a vessel. This is very difficult because once people see a fire on board a boat out in the middle of nowhere, then your lives feel threatened, and then it's difficult to control. But we'll have to ensure that our officers on board the vessels, are adequately trained so that they can perform these functions.
The Director of the Maritime Safety, Captain John Flores, notes that the exercise provided an opportunity for beneficiaries to better know the standing operation procedures of maritime search and rescue.
I think the exercise itself helped us to kind of getting to know the standing operating procedures of maritime search and rescue a bit more. I want to say that I'll have this distributed to the various agencies here, incorporating some of the comments that you've made, such as the contact numbers and so on. And as was suggested by the Ministry of Health person, the next stage from tabletop would be we call it a field exercise or a simulation exercise. We'll have to plan on that probably before the end of the year.
Participants were drawn from MARAD, the Guyana Defence Force Coast Guard, Transport and Harbour Department, Ministry of Public Health, Ministry of Agriculture's Fisheries Department, Guyana Trawlers Owners Association, Guyana Fire Service, Guyana Police Force, Marine Department, Guyana Civil Aviation Authority, and the Guyana Civil Defence Commission. Delon Sanko for the Government News Brief.
We have come to the end of today's edition of the Government News Brief. The details of these and other stories can be found on GINA's website. GINA has an active Facebook page, and we encourage you to visit and like us so you can be informed as the news unfolds. You can also visit our website and YouTube channel. Remember to join again on Tuesday for another edition of the Government News Brief. I am Renetta LaFleur. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful weekend.